A mechanic with big dreams but a limited budget, Clara Hartley stumbled upon an old concrete slab no more than a neglected parking lot slab, sitting amidst piles of abandoned junk. The seller claimed it was worthless, and everyone else believed him. But when Clara started digging, she uncovered something far from ordinary. A hidden military bunker, still operational, full of secrets from a forgotten era, and a mystery that would change her life forever. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from. If you love stories of forgotten history, mystery, and strong women, hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss tomorrow's episode. It's even more mind-blowing than this one. Clara Hartley wiped the sweat from her brow, squinting at the listing on her phone. The words, "Concrete slab for sale $500, blinked back at her, accompanied by a grainy photo of a dull gray parking lot half buried under a blanket of weeds. The description was simple. Ideal for light commercial use. Buyer assumes all liability. No inspection available. Sold as is. No one would have looked twice at this property, but Clara wasn't just anyone. At 28, with a wrench in her hand and grease under her nails, she had inherited her father's small mechanic shop, and she'd kept it alive with grit and hard work. Business was slow, though, and she dreamed of expanding her space, but the funds never stretched far enough. This concrete slab, though if she could turn it into a garage, it would be more room for repairs, and maybe, just maybe, a fresh start. She stood at the edge of the slab now, boots crunching against the overgrown gravel. A faded sign at the corner of the lot read, "For sale by owner," a scrawled number beneath it. There was nothing remarkable about it. The slab was cracked in places, the concrete stained by years of neglect. It looked like just another forgotten piece of land. But to Clara, it was full of possibility. She pulled out her phone, dialing the number before she could second-guess herself. "Hello?" came the gruff voice on the other end. "Hi, I'm interested in the concrete lot. Is it still available?" Clara asked, her voice steady despite the excitement bubbling inside her. "Yeah, it's still here. No one's bought it for months. It's basically worthless. But if you want it, $500, and it's yours." Clara didn't hesitate. "I'll take it." As the call ended, she looked out over the land. For a moment, it felt like her life was on the verge of something new, something big. She wasn't just buying land. She was buying freedom. She was buying the chance to finally build something of her own, without limits. Clara couldn't have known it then, but beneath the cracked concrete and crumbling signs, her life was about to change forever. The morning sun had barely crept over the horizon when Clara arrived at the lot, the weight of the shovel heavy in her hands. Her truck rumbled to a stop beside the slab, and she stepped out, boots crunching against the dirt as she surveyed the area. The lot was empty, save for a few rusted vehicles scattered at the edge, remnants of some forgotten time. The weeds had overgrown the space, swallowing the edges of the concrete like nature was intent on reclaiming what was once abandoned. She'd already made the deal, signed the paperwork, handed over the cash, and now it was time to see what she had really bought. It was more than just a concrete slab, after all. This was her chance to build something. And yet, something about the place felt strange. Clara crouched down and ran her gloved fingers along the surface, brushing away the dirt and grime that had settled into the cracks. The slab, though old, felt solid under her touch. She could imagine it, her new garage, her own space to finally expand. But there was more here, something that didn't quite sit right. As she dug a little deeper into the dirt by the edge, Clara's eye caught something unusual. A small marking etched deeply into the concrete. It was a series of symbols, almost like a code. At first glance, they looked like nothing more than scratches, random and worn by time. But the closer she examined them, the more they seemed to form a pattern. Her heart skipped a beat. The symbols were familiar. She'd seen something similar once, on a project she'd worked on a few years back, something military in nature. She leaned in, her breath catching slightly in her throat. This wasn't just a parking lot. There was something hidden here, beneath the surface, calling to her. Pulling out a crowbar from her truck, Clara got to work, carefully prying at the edges of the slab where the markings were. The first few minutes felt like any other laborious task. But as she chipped away, a faint draft hit her face. A coolness she hadn't expected. It was barely noticeable, but Clara felt it, and her curiosity grew. She pressed on, the crowbar scraping loudly against the concrete as the dust swirled around her. The deeper she went, the more she wondered, what was beneath this slab? Was it just old infrastructure? Or was there something more, something hidden? She didn't know why, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was on the verge of uncovering something far more important than she had ever imagined. Minutes passed, then hours. By the time the sun had climbed high, Clara's arms were sore, her hands covered in grime. Sweat trickled down her neck as she took a breath, wiping her forehead with the back of her glove. She'd uncovered a crack that seemed to go deep into the earth, but there was something else now, something more distinct. A small metal latch, half buried in the rubble. Clara's breath hitched as she knelt down, her fingers trembling slightly as they brushed the latch. It was rusted and worn, but it was definitely there, a door, a hidden passage. Her heart pounded in her chest. She hadn't expected this. The slab was far from empty, and the mysteries beneath it were only beginning to unfold. She grabbed the latch, tugging it with all her might, and the metal groaned in protest. It took a few more pulls before it gave way, revealing a rusty metal door beneath the concrete, a door that had been locked away for decades. Clara stepped back, staring at the door as a mix of disbelief and excitement flooded her senses. She had only come here looking for space, a place to build. But now, she realized, she had stumbled upon something far more extraordinary. This was no ordinary concrete slab. It was a secret waiting to be unlocked. Without hesitation, Clara grabbed her flashlight, her hands now steady despite the unease building inside her. She took one final glance at the land above, feeling the weight of what she was about to uncover, then pulled open the door, revealing a steep, dimly lit staircase leading down into the unknown. There was no turning back now. The faint sound of Clara's boots hitting the metal stairs echoed in the dark, her flashlight cutting through the shadows like a blade. She hesitated for a moment, standing at the top of the stairs, the cool air from below swirling around her ankles. The staircase was old, its iron steps creaking under her weight, but it was sturdy, unnervingly so, considering the age of the place. Her pulse quickened as she descended, the beam of her flashlight flickering across the walls. The air grew colder as she made her way deeper. The walls were lined with what looked like old military supplies crates marked with symbols she didn't recognize, and faded labels warning of hazardous materials. The floor beneath her was concrete, worn, and cracked, like the slab above, but there was a heaviness to it, a sense of purpose that sent shivers down her spine. At the bottom of the stairs, Clara found herself in a wide, low-ceilinged room. It felt like the heart of the bunker, the kind of place where something important might have once been stored. She swept her flashlight across the room, scanning every inch. The dim light revealed rows of metal shelves filled with crates and boxes, all stamped with the same faded military insignia. She couldn't help but wonder what was hidden inside. Everything was covered in a thick layer of dust, as though the bunker had been forgotten for years, decades, even. But there was something else in the air, a faint hum, a vibration in the walls that made Clara's skin crawl. The more she looked around, the more she felt the weight of the place. This wasn't just a storage facility. It was a vault, and its contents were meant to be hidden for a reason. Clara moved toward the nearest shelf, her flashlight catching on a stack of old metal boxes. She pulled one down carefully, brushing away the dust. The box was heavy, its surface dented and scratched from years of neglect. She pried it open with a grunt, revealing what looked like a bundle of old documents and maps, yellowed with age. Clara's fingers hesitated before touching them, but curiosity won out. She pulled the top sheet from the pile and let the rest fall to the floor. The paper was brittle, but she could still make out the words written in faded ink. A date 1962. And underneath, in bold letters, top secret. Clara's heart skipped. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up as she flipped through the pages. What she found were detailed maps, schematics of old government facilities, and notes about projects that seemed far too advanced for the time. Her breath quickened. This was no ordinary stash of forgotten papers. This was history, buried beneath the earth, hidden away from prying eyes. The bunker was more than just a relic of the past, it was a time capsule, full of secrets from a time when fear of the unknown had shaped the world. Clara's fingers trembled as she sifted through the papers, each one more intriguing than the last. The documents described projects that were part of a larger, government initiative, experiments, research, and technological advancements that had been buried under layers of secrecy. She couldn't fully grasp the magnitude of what she was reading, but one thing was clear. This bunker, had been far more than a simple storage site. It was a repository of secrets, and she had just unlocked the door to it. Clara stood there for a long moment, feeling the weight of the discovery. She wasn't sure what to do with the documents, whether to keep them hidden like the bunker had been, or to expose them and risk everything. But there was no denying the pull of the unknown. The deeper she went, the more questions she had. With a deep breath, Clara pushed forward. The next shelf beckoned, and she couldn't resist the urge to keep exploring. Every step she took led her deeper into the mystery of the bunker, and something told her that whatever lay ahead would change her life in ways she couldn't yet imagine. For now, Clara knew one thing for sure. She had discovered something far bigger than herself, and there was no turning back. Clara's flashlight flickered as she moved deeper into the bunker, casting long shadows on the walls. The air down here was stale, and the temperature had dropped several degrees. She had already explored a few of the shelves, finding documents, crates of military gear, and what appeared to be some sort of mechanical devices. But the further she ventured, the more intense her feeling of unease became. It was as though the bunker itself had a pulse, a rhythm, and she had only just tapped into it. Her heart beat faster as she moved past a row of crates, its contents hidden beneath layers of heavy tarps. At the far end of the room, Clara noticed something odd, a metal door, partially obscured by a stack of crates. It was just like the one she had uncovered above ground, rusted and almost invisible. But this one had no markings, no signs of its purpose. It blended seamlessly into the walls, as if trying to hide its existence from the outside world. Clara stopped in her tracks, her breath caught in her throat. She knew she had to see what was behind this door. Every instinct in her screamed that it was important. She approached it slowly, eyes scanning the edges, looking for any sign of what lay beyond. The door was secured by an elaborate locking mechanism, one she had never seen before. It wasn't just a padlock or a bolt. It looked like something far more advanced, perhaps military-grade security designed to keep something in or out. Her fingers brushed against the cold, rusted surface of the door. She could feel the weight of the lock, its cold metal pressing against her fingertips. With a deep breath, she took a step back and scanned her surroundings. There had to be a way in. Clara's gaze landed on a small tool kit that had been left on the workbench at the far end of the room. She didn't hesitate. She grabbed it, her mind already racing through the possibilities. There were tools here, screwdrivers, pliers, and a crowbar. She grabbed a crowbar first, knowing it might be her best bet for forcing the lock open. She'd broken into her fair share of junkyard cars over the years, but this felt different. Her heart pounded in her chest as she returned to the door, crowbar in hand. With a steadying breath, she wedged the crowbar between the lock and the frame. She could hear the metal groan in protest as she applied pressure, her muscles straining with the effort. The lock didn't budge. "Come on," Clara muttered under her breath, frustration building as she shoved harder against the crowbar. She adjusted her grip, trying a different angle, and then click. The lock gave way, and the door creaked open with a low, ominous groan. A rush of cold air spilled from behind the door as Clara stepped back, startled. The room on the other side was darker than the rest of the bunker, the air thick with the scent of metal and old machinery. The flashlight beam trembled as she stepped through the threshold, revealing what looked like a control room, a small, cluttered space lined with monitors, blinking lights, and old computer terminals covered in dust. Everything was coated with a layer of grime, untouched for years. But despite its abandonment, there was a strange, almost unsettling feeling of activity in the air, like the place had been waiting for someone to come and awaken it. Her breath caught in her throat as she slowly approached the nearest terminal. The screen flickered, suddenly coming to life with a sharp crackle. Clara froze, staring at the monitor as it blinked to life in front of her. The text was fuzzy at first, but it quickly sharpened, revealing a series of commands scrolling down the screen. Warning. Unauthorized access detected. Security breach in Sector 5. Clara's fingers trembled as she read the message. She didn't know what any of it meant, but one thing was clear: this bunker wasn't just a relic. It was active, and it had been waiting. The monitor beeped again, and another line of text appeared, this time clearer, more specific. Operation Blacksite. Active. Secure all classified materials. Clara stepped back, her pulse quickening. She wasn't just dealing with some forgotten stash of military junk. This was something far bigger in operation, still running, even after all these years. It felt like she had uncovered something far beyond her understanding, something that could change everything. The room seemed to close in on her as she processed the weight of what she had found. Clara Hartley, the mechanic, had just stumbled upon a piece of history far more dangerous and valuable than she had ever imagined. As the screens continued to blink and hum, Clara knew she was standing on the edge of something monumental, and the deeper she went, the harder it would be to turn back. The air felt thicker now, pressing in on Clara as she scanned the control room. The hum of the old monitors was constant, like an eerie heartbeat. The realization of what she had just unlocked, the possibility that this was no simple forgotten storage facility, but something far more clandestine, had begun to settle in her mind. It wasn't just history buried here. It was an active part of something bigger, something that, for reasons she couldn't yet understand, had been kept secret for decades. Clara's eyes darted to the far wall, where another door stood. This one, however, looked far more secure. Unlike the rusted one she'd opened earlier, this door was made of thick reinforced steel, with a keypad beside it, and a small weathered plaque above that read, "Vault 12 amperes, authorized personnel only." She swallowed hard, her breath catching in her throat. The weight of the discovery, the weight of what she had stumbled upon, pressed heavier on her chest. This wasn't just some forgotten government project. This was a vault, a place where something important, something dangerous, was being kept hidden from the world. Clara's mind raced. The door before her wasn't like the one she'd just forced open. It had a security code, a system designed to keep out anyone unauthorized. She had no idea how to open it, no way of knowing what kind of technology was required to bypass the security. But she knew she had to try. The secrets behind this door, whatever they were, could change everything. With steady hands, Clara approached the keypad. The buttons were old, worn from years of neglect, but they still seemed functional. She pressed a few keys at random. Nothing happened. A cold, metal beep echoed in the room, signaling the wrong combination. Clara stepped back, frustrated but undeterred. She scanned the area around the keypad for any clues, any numbers that might give her a hint, and that's when she noticed something. A small scrap of paper, tucked under the edge of the desk. She pulled it out carefully, and her eyes widened as she read the numbers. Written in faint pencil. 1380. 7. Her heart skipped. It seemed like a simple enough code. Clara wiped her sweaty palms on her jeans, and, with a deep breath, typed in the numbers. The keypad blinked once, twice, and then click. The heavy steel door groaned as it unlocked, the sound reverberating through the silence of the bunker. Clara's pulse quickened as she reached for the door handle, pulling it open slowly, the creak of the door filling the air. Beyond it, the vault was dimly lit by an overhead light that flickered on, revealing a large concrete room. Metal shelves lined the walls, each one packed with crates, boxes, and sealed containers. The smell of aged metal and dust filled her nostrils. Everything in the vault was organized, meticulously stored away as though it had been waiting for someone to uncover it. But what caught her attention wasn't just the sheer volume of items. It was the crates themselves, marked with the same top-secret stamps as the documents she had found earlier. Only this time, the markings were bolder, the symbols more intricate, and there were new words alongside them. Words like classified, black site, and quarantine zone. Clara felt a chill run down her spine. She walked into the vault, the sound of her footsteps echoing in the otherwise silent room. The shelves were stacked high, each crate holding something that felt more dangerous than the last. As she moved deeper, she spotted a large crate near the back. It was different from the others, heavier, more intricate, with a combination lock that was far more complicated than any she had seen. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the lock. It was cold to the touch, the metal smooth and unfamiliar. She traced the edges, looking for any kind of marking or code, but there was nothing. Just a simple, tight combination lock. Clara took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. She could almost hear the clock ticking in the back of her mind. There was no telling what was inside this crate, but something in her gut told her it was important. She had come this far, there was no turning back now. Clara grabbed the lock and twisted it, turning the dials slowly. The combination felt like it might have been set decades ago, but with each turn, the lock's mechanism clicked into place. The last number fell into place with a soft click, and Clara let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. The lock gave way, and the lid of the crate popped open, revealing what lay inside. Clara's eyes widened as she peered into the crate. There, nestled in layers of protective cloth, was a device unlike anything she had ever seen. It was metallic, sleek, and futuristic, its surface etched with intricate symbols that matched the markings she had found earlier. It hummed softly, as though alive, its pulsing lights casting an eerie glow across the room. It was clear now. This wasn't just a forgotten military bunker. It was a repository of something far more significant, far more dangerous. And Clara Hartley, a mechanic by trade, had just unlocked the door to a world she could never have imagined. Her hands shook as she reached for the device, the weight of her discovery settling in. What had she found? What was this device? And why had it been hidden away, locked beneath layers of concrete and secrecy? The answers were buried somewhere in the bunker, hidden among the crates and documents, and Clara knew that she would stop at nothing to uncover the truth. But as she stood in the vault, staring at the device in her hands, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that this discovery was only the beginning. The deeper she went, the more the mystery grew, and the more dangerous it became. There was no turning back now. Clara stared at the papers spread across the table, her mind racing. The bunker wasn't just an abandoned facility, it was a part of something larger, something hidden for a reason. Gabriel was deep into deciphering military schematics, his brow furrowed with concentration. Clara, meanwhile, traced her fingers over the maps and old documents. The more she uncovered, the clearer it became. This place had been the hub of some secretive, far-reaching operation. Among the files, one name kept appearing: Dr. Evelyn Gray. Clara felt a jolt when she saw it. She'd read the name before, but never understood its significance. According to the files, Dr. Gray had overseen experiments, projects involving neural enhancements, genetic engineering, and even weaponization of biological systems. The files described things that didn't sound like science fiction, they were too real, too dangerous. These projects were meant to push the boundaries of human capability, Gabriel muttered. Control, influence. They were trying to create something, or someone, that could change everything. Clara's heart raced. What had she stumbled into? She wasn't just uncovering hidden military technology anymore. She was holding the key to decades of experiments, all meant to shape the world in ways they never should have. The hum of the device in the corner seemed to call to her, as though it knew what she was beginning to understand. She had to keep digging. But as the truth began to unfold, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that the danger was no longer just in the past. It was coming for her. She stood up, the weight of the discovery heavy in her chest. "We can't stop now," she said, voice trembling. "We have to expose this." Gabriel looked up, his expression grim. It's not going to be that easy. Clara's decision to expose the truth didn't come without risk, and she knew she couldn't do it alone. Gabriel had been a valuable ally, but the stakes were too high. She needed someone who could help her get the story out before the government found out what she was up to. Her first thought was Mark Hawk, an investigative journalist she'd met years ago. Mark had a reputation for digging into stories that others couldn't, stories that threatened powerful people. If anyone could help, it was him. She dialed his number, her heart racing. After a few rings, Mark's voice came through, low and gruff. "Clara? It's been a while. What's going on?" "I need your help," she said, her voice urgent. "I've found something huge, and I need to make sure it gets out. The government's already looking for me. I can't do this alone." There was a long pause on the line. Mark had always been cautious, but his curiosity won out. "All right, I'm listening. What have you found?" Clara hesitated, looking at Gabriel, who was watching her closely. "It's a military bunker. Hidden experiments, weapons, neural technology. It's a conspiracy that's been buried for decades." "I'll meet you," Mark said, cutting her off. "We'll get this out, but you have to be ready. Once it's out there, there's no going back." Clara felt a surge of hope, but it was tinged with fear. They had a chance to expose the truth, but she knew the price would be high. "Thank you," she whispered. Gabriel turned to her, concern on his face. "Are you sure about this? It's going to get ugly." Clara nodded. "We don't have a choice." The decision had been made. Clara and Gabriel met Mark in a dingy cafe, their voices low as they discussed their plan. Mark's face was hard, but his eyes betrayed the weight of the story they were about to uncover. He understood the risks all too well. He had seen people disappear for less. Clara was the one who had stumbled upon the truth, but Mark was the one who could make sure it got out to the world. He was already talking to his contacts in the media, preparing for the release of the files. But there was one problem: they were all being watched. "Once we release this, there's no turning back," Mark warned, leaning in. "The government has people everywhere, and they're not going to let this slide, but we need to act fast. The more time we give them, the easier it will be for them to bury this." Clara's heart pounded in her chest. She had no idea what would happen next, but she knew that if she didn't act, the truth would be erased, just like it had been for decades. They agreed on a plan. Mark would leak the documents to the press, but they had to make sure they were in multiple hands, too many to control. They also made backup copies, just in case they needed a way to protect themselves. "Once it's out there, we'll go public," Mark said. "But I'll need your help. You're the one who found this, Clara. People will want to hear from you." Clara nodded, fear creeping up her spine. This wasn't just about uncovering a conspiracy, it was about staying alive long enough to expose it. The night before the documents were set to go public, Clara sat in the small, dimly lit room of Mark's apartment, staring at the stack of papers in front of her. Her hands trembled as she reached for the top file. It was the last piece of the puzzle. The part that would expose the entire operation, the dark truth behind the Black Site project. But as her fingers hovered over the papers, Clara hesitated. What would happen once this went out? The government would come after her. The people who had been behind the operation would do everything they could to silence her. There would be no going back. Gabriel paced in the corner, the worry on his face clear. "We're as ready as we're going to be. We've got the evidence. But once it's out there, we'll be marked targets." Clara felt the weight of his words. She had always prided herself on being a fighter, but this felt different. The decision was no longer about curiosity, it was about survival. About making sure the truth didn't disappear again. She looked up at Gabriel, determination hardening in her eyes. "If we don't do this, we're just letting them win. We have to make sure they can't bury it. We owe it to everyone who suffered, because of what happened in that bunker." Gabriel nodded, resigned but supportive. "Then let's do it." Clara took a deep breath and picked up the phone. It was time. The next morning, the world changed. The first article hit the internet, a shocking exposé detailing the existence of the Black Site bunker and the horrific experiments hidden inside. It was just the beginning. Mark's sources had ensured the information was spread across every major outlet. Within hours, the story went viral. Clara sat in a small room with Gabriel and Mark, watching the fallout unfold. The government had already issued a statement denying everything, but the evidence was undeniable. People were talking, and for the first time, Clara felt like the truth was finally out in the open. But the fight wasn't over. The government would try to discredit the story. They would come after anyone involved. Clara knew they'd be watching her. But for the first time, she didn't feel afraid. She felt free. "This is only the beginning," Mark said, looking at Clara. "There are more stories to tell. More secrets to uncover." Clara nodded, her eyes set with resolve. The bunker had been just the start. There were still people who needed to hear the truth, and she wasn't about to stop now. As the world watched, the legacy of the bunker lived on, not as a buried secret, but as a symbol of resilience. Clara Hartley had exposed the darkness, and in doing so, had become a beacon of hope for those who would continue to fight for the truth. The battle had only just begun.